Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. G7 leaders begin meetings in Quebec to focus on addressing global challenges, and Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly meets with Marco Rubio to discuss U.S. tariffs. Plus, Ontario's Premier and other Canadian officials head to Washington to discuss the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement. And the Home, Garden and Leisure Trade Show kicks off in Lethbridge.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks so much for joining us. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has marked his last full day in office Thursday. Trudeau issued a farewell message on social media as he leaves office after more than 9 years as Prime Minister and does not plan to run again.
I am so proud of Canadians. I'm proud to have served a country full of people who stand up for what's right, rise to every occasion, and always have each other's backs when it matters most. This may be my last day here in this office, but I will always be boldly and unapologetically Canadian. My only ask is that no matter what the world throws at us, you always be the same.
Tomorrow, Liberal leader Mark Carney is set to be sworn in as Canada's 24th Prime Minister. G7 leaders gathered in Quebec today, and Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly says she's focused on working with Canada's peers to address global challenges.
So, of course, peace and stability is on the top of our agenda, and I look forward to discussing how we can continue to support Ukraine in the face of Russia's illegal aggression, and we will want to see just and lasting peace in Ukraine. Of course, we want to foster long-term stability as well in the Middle East in the interest of all the people in the region, and we want to build resilience and stability in the Indo-Pacific, in Haiti, and in Venezuela.
Joly opened the Group of 7 foreign ministers meeting also saying American tariffs would be the focus of her closed-door talks. Joly spoke with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio this morning, and both are set to meet with ministers representing France, the U.K., Germany, Italy, Japan, and the European Union. Ontario Premier Doug Ford is expected to meet with the U.S. Commerce Secretary today in Washington, along with several other Canadian officials. Federal Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc, Industry Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne, and Ambassador to the U.S. Kirsten Hillman are all set to meet with Howard Lutnick. The move comes days after a dust-up with U.S. President Donald Trump that ended with Ontario pausing its surcharge on electricity exports to the United States, and Canada's retaliatory 25% tariffs on American goods worth $29.8 billion went into effect overnight in retaliation of the steel and aluminum tariffs Trump imposed Wednesday. Ford says he expects to talk about the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement, also called the CUSMA, and hopes to speed up a mandatory review of the trade pact set for next year. He spoke with reporters on Wednesday prior to his trip to D.C.
Well, we're just going down there to, first of all, build a relationship and see exactly what their needs are. And I said I'd convey that right back to the premiers. And, you know, I don't want to set the expectations that we're walking away with a USMCA deal, because that's not going to happen. But at least we'll get a feel and what they need. And you're going to look at someone across the table and look into their eyes. That's the most important thing. I want to find out where their bar is set. You know, rather than keep moving the goalpost, I want to find out how quickly you want to move forward. But yes, there's going to be conversations about tariffs, and as we move forward, we're going to ask them, let's move this USMCA deal up as quickly as possible to give certainty to the world, not just Canada and the U.S., but the entire world.
Now, Canada's retaliation to 25% U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs include a host of common household goods, including the kitchen sink, according to the Canadian press. The extensive list is part of the broader counter-tariff package expected to expand to $155 billion in imported U.S. products by the end of the month. Here are just some of the consumer items imported into Canada from the U.S. that are expected to soon cost 25% more for Canadians. We're talking video games, consoles, microphones, speakers, headphones, and other audio equipment, watches, sleeping bags, fishing gear, golf club and tennis rackets, sailboard and water sport equipment, tricycles and toy scooters, stoves and barbecues, shovels and rakes, toothbrushes, hairbrushes and combs, and the list goes on and on and on, really. The full list of items can be found on the Canadian government's website, and as announced Wednesday, the federal government also intends to impose tariffs on an additional list of imported U.S. products worth $125 billion. Now, this second list will be made available in the coming days. Upon returning from the CERAWeek Energy Conference in Houston, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe says canola crushing plant workers could be out of a job if China moves ahead with planned retaliatory tariffs on canola oil and meal. Moe says Prime Minister-designate Mark Carney must immediately engage with China to prevent the levies from being imposed next week. China is planning to impose 100% tariffs on canola oil, meal, and peas in response to Canada putting levies on Chinese-made electronic vehicles, steel, and aluminum. A Regina police officer is facing charges after being accused of accessing internal databases to meet women. Sergeant Robert Eric Semenchuk, a 22-year member of the Regina Police Service, is charged with breach of trust and unauthorized use of a computer. He was suspended and had his database access removed. Regina Police Chief Farouk Sheikh says public trust has been undermined.
We were made aware about these allegations by a member of the public in early 2023. And we took those allegations seriously. And as a result, we suspended the member and removed access to all database and access for him being able to come into the police station as well. Public trust and confidence is paramount to the work that we do here and in the communities. We acknowledge that a police officer being charged can negatively impact trust and confidence. And I'm hoping as well that the community and all yous also recognise our accountability and transparency here today as well.
Alberta Health Minister says the province's latest budget will support plans to add up to 700 new inpatient hospital beds in Edmonton. Adriana LaGrange says Budget 2025 would provide $2 million to develop the inpatient towers at the Grey Nuns and Misericordia community hospitals. She says the new beds would improve access to care and health outcomes for Albertans. If passed, Budget 2025 would include a total of $180 million over 3 years for health capital projects in the Edmonton area. Earlier this week, LaGrange defended her government's decision to potentially send unused Turkish-manufactured Tylenol to Ukraine. When speaking to reporters, she called the imported medication, quote, good quality drugs, despite previous concerns raised by healthcare staff.
The manufacturer of these drugs, Atabay, actually supplies acetaminophen for most of Europe, Northern Africa, and the Middle East as well. So these are good quality drugs. They would not have been allowed to come into Alberta by Health Canada were they not good quality drugs. So first, to correct that misinformation. Second, since I came into office, I have had concerns about these good quality drugs sitting on a shelf and not wanting to see them expire. If we can't use them in Alberta, then we should be sending them to other countries, particularly war-torn countries that have a lack of medication for their people, and that's what we've been exploring.
Now, Premier Danielle Smith told reporters at a press conference last week that the province was approached by a third party with the idea to send the medication to Ukraine. Smith said the government is now looking for Health Canada approval, and the deal is in the works. 10 Lethbridge residents who have made a humongous impact to the community are to receive the King Charles III Coronation Medals. The ceremony is taking place Thursday evening at the Sandman Signature Hotel. The ceremony will recognize these exceptional people for their service, leadership, and dedication to the betterment of society. The medals symbolize a commitment to the values of duty and public service upheld by His Majesty King Charles III, and these medals are only given out when we get a new monarch. Lethbridge MP Rachel Thomas will have the honor of awarding the 10 individuals with their medals.
I get really excited about these types of events. You know, our community is full of people who go above and beyond to give back in meaningful ways and make the lives of others better. And these are individuals who work incredibly hard and give of their time and their talent and their energy, not expecting anything back. None of them do. But to have the opportunity to give them that unexpected award and to be able to celebrate who they are and the difference that they're making is just one of my favorite things to do. I absolutely look forward to the opportunity.
For a full list of the medal recipients, you can visit our website. So exciting. Well, Lethbridge Family Services is about to celebrate its first Spring to Light benefit gala. The fundraising event, to be held on April 25th, recognizes LFS's 115 years of service to the community. Michelle Gallucci, Director of Advancement and Communications with LFS, explains the exciting features of the gala and the program the funds will benefit.
For a health and wellness program facilitator and navigator for our Immigrant Services Department to help our newcomer children, youth, and families navigate the mental health system. Our guest speaker, Mr. Rick Mercer, he's excited to come. We are very excited that he's going to speak to our crowd, questions and answer, and he will sign a few books if people bring their books. We hope to raise $50,000. We will have 50 silent auction items. They are really great. Every auction item is $250 or more. The tickets are $200 each because it is a fundraiser, and we have 84 tickets left.
The event will be held at the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center. Tickets can be found at lfsfamily.ca. Well, if you love Broadway musicals, a very famous one is coming to Lethbridge. Mamma Mia will be hitting the stage at the Knights of Columbus Eggplant Theatre. It's being put on by Catholic Central High School from March 14th to the 22nd. Jessica Enns, one of the show's producers, explains how this musical will support the Chinook Child and Youth Advocacy Center. Enns and others involved in this exciting event explain how much they have been preparing for the production and what the public can experience while attending the show.
Mamma Mia has been a show that has been quite an enjoyable and exciting time to put on. We've been working hard with our cast since the end of October and our crew since the start of December to put on all of the bells and whistles that you get to see at our program this year.
To do something that's completely different from Disney or like anything that's not related to like an actual cartoon, it's really fun to do something that's even on Broadway, so it's really interesting.
I'm excited to do the show because I feel like a lot of the people I know around me know a lot of ABBA music, and that's kind of the sole reason why I'm doing the show.
It feels really good to be helping a charity through things that we enjoy doing, because everyone in the show really enjoys the process and the outcome of singing and dancing and acting and all of that put together, and I really appreciate that all of our hard work is going to a charity organization.
And we have 10 shows available. A few are close to selling out already. We do have some availability. Tickets can be purchased through our school website. And tickets are $20 plus the service charge for our regular performances and $25 for our sing-along events. We have 3 sing-along shows, so then $5 per ticket will go to the Child, Youth and Advocacy Center.
Such a wonderful opportunity for us to collaborate together to raise money for the center. It's a great initiative to involve students and youth in doing some of that fundraising and getting that advocacy about child abuse out into the public and discussed among schools. Partnerships with schools is one of our favorite partnerships to have, because this is where the youth are. This is where we can connect with them one-on-one.
Tickets are available through Eventbrite, and links can be accessed through Catholic Central's webpage. Well, Halo Air Ambulance was the belle of the ball Thursday afternoon at the Home, Garden and Leisure Show, which opened its doors today and is in full swing at the Lethbridge's Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center. The charity was presented a check for over $21,000 from Real Estate Center, the business that recently held a fundraiser in support of Halo and other similar charities. CEO for Halo Air Ambulance, Paul Carolan, says air ambulances can access hard-to-reach places more quickly and easily than a traditional ambulance, which saves lives.
We go to the worst of the worst, right? So helicopters are reserved for the sickest of the sick and the hurtest of the hurst. And so they have a big role to play. And when we get into rural Alberta, even in centers around Lethbridge and Medicine Hat that have a big municipal population, it takes a long time for an ambulance to get places, whether it's river valleys or coulees or canals. Sometimes it can take hours. And so the helicopter doesn't have to deal with any of those things. We cruise at 250 kilometers an hour and go as the bird flies. So, a flight from Medicine Hat to Lethbridge is about 40 minutes.
We actually do an annual fundraiser once a year with our company White for Stars and Halo, and we have focused in on Halo because we have an office in Taber and we cover the southern Saskatchewan area. So because of Halo being there and Stars not being able to fly in there, we want to make sure that we support Halo as well. This year was a record year, so in total we did $84,000 with $21,000 going to Halo, and last year we did about $49,000. I don't know what the total was that went to Halo, but yeah, this was a record year for us.
You can see the newest addition to Halo Air Ambulance's fleet at the Home, Garden and Leisure Show, which runs right through until Saturday. And that show is always such a good one. And hopefully the weather holds up for it too this week. Still dealing with lots of wind out there tonight. And Friday, it's supposed to cool down quite a bit as well. Full weather details on deck right after the break. Well, hold on to your hats because we're expecting up to 70-kilometer-per-hour winds tonight, but they're going to settle down tomorrow to 15K. Not so bad at all. Here's a look at your weather.
Welcome to today's weather forecast for the 13th of March. The next 7 days of weather for Lethbridge starts with a cloudy day for today, with a high of 13 and an overnight low of -10. Tomorrow has a high of 2 with sunny skies and a low of -11. The weekend is looking to start off brisk and then end in a cold spell. Saturday has a high of 5 with some sun and cloud and a low of -3, and Sunday has a high of 10 with an overnight chance of showers and a low of 0. This trend follows through into Monday with a high of 12 and some sun and cloud, and ending with -6 and a 60% chance of rain or snow. Tuesday gets the brunt of Monday's forecast with a 30% chance of flurries and a high of 1, with flurries still expected through the night and a low of -6 as well. Wednesday wraps up the 7-day forecast with a projected high of 8 and an estimated low of 1. Reading today's almanac, the average high for this time of year is 6 degrees, with a low of -7. The record highs for today saw Lethbridge with 11 degrees, only set back in 2022. The low for today sits at -23, that was set back in 1995. The sun rose at 7:50 a.m. and set at 7:33 p.m. Moving on to today's national forecast, we see Victoria with a high of 7 with some chances of rain, alongside Vancouver with chance of rain and a high of 8. Edmonton is looking to have a high of -8 with some snow, along with Calgary with a high of -4. Moving on to the prairies, Winnipeg is seeing a high of 2 with some rain, Regina is seeing a high of only -3 with some snow as well, and Saskatoon is getting a chilly -8 with some snow as well. Central Canada is looking to be quite sunny compared to the prairies, with Toronto having a high of 11 with sunny skies, Ottawa having a high of 7 along with sunny skies, and Montreal having a high of 8 with sunny skies to finish that off. On to the East Coast, Fredericton is looking to have a high of 9 with sunny skies, alongside Halifax with a high of 8, Charlottetown with a high of 5, and St. John's with a high of 2.
Hamilton Mayor Andrea Horwath says a protracted tariff war with the U.S. would hurt not only the 28,000 people working in the local steel industry, but the entire city of around 600,000 people. She says an economic hit of this magnitude will have a ripple effect.
Many items start here in Canada, for example, in Hamilton, as a particular product. Then they go to the States, it becomes something else. They use it to make something else, comes back, use it to make something else, and can go back and forth up to 6 to 8 times. And so tariffs are a problem. And then, of course, with the retaliatory tariffs as well, it makes things even more difficult. Impacting not only Hamilton workers, but workers in those companies as well on the other side of the border.
A new poll suggests that 2 in 5 Canadians are worried about losing their jobs in the trade war with the United States. A Leger poll asked respondents, how concerned are you about losing your job in the next 12 months? 40% said they were very or somewhat concerned. Poll results show that Ontarians are the most concerned, with over half saying they're scared of losing their job. On the flip side, about 1 in 4 people in Atlantic Canada and Quebec say they're worried. 2 in 5 people in British Columbia, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan are worried, and 1 in 3 people in Alberta. Empire Company Limited, which owns multiple grocery banners across the country, including Sobeys and Freshco, is seeing sales of American products rapidly dropping as shoppers support the Canadian economy amid the North American trade war. Empire CEO Michael Medline says the company has heard loud and clear from customers that they want Canadian products. About 12% of Empire's products are sourced from the U.S. in a normal year, but Medline says this is not a normal year. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 220 points on the day to finish at 24,203. The Dow was down 537 points to 40,813. The S&P 500 was also down at 77 points to 5,521. The Nasdaq was down 345 to 17,303. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 93 cents to 66.74 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 5 cents to 403 US. Gold was up 50.44 to $2,988.45 US an ounce. Silver was up 58 cents to 33.86 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.57 per bushel. Barley is at $6.60. Canola is at $13.21, and corn is at $8 per bushel. Live cattle were up 65 cents to $202.05, that's the April contract. Feeder cattle were down 75 cents to $279.97. Lean hogs April contract was down 87 cents to $85.62. And the Canadian dollar is down slightly over the past 24 hours to 69.20 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau marked his last full day in office Thursday. Trudeau issued a farewell message on social media as he leaves office more than 9 years as Prime Minister and does not plan to run again. Well, did you know research shows multitasking isn't good for your brain? Hear more about this and learn ways to prioritize your time with Michael Bell, author of Managing God's Time, coming up after the break. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also check out our website or YouTube page anytime for more of our stories and interviews. Are we too busy, never having enough time, then getting all stressed out because we're rushed and can't get things done? Well, is it time that we learned how to deal with time? Today's guest is an expert on time management. Michael Bell is an adjunct professor of business administration at Briarcrest College and Seminary, and he was a vice president with one of the world's largest aluminum manufacturers, and he's the author of Managing God's Time. Michael, great to have you with us today. That's quite a background there. You got aluminum, you got author, you got, a professor, a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here to talk about time.
Wonderful. I was going to say, with all the things in your background, it sounds like you're the perfect person who would have had to develop great time management.
Absolutely, especially having had 2 ulcers before I was 35.
Oh, well,
Just
yeah.
going. Yes,
Exactly.
I had to.
Well, okay, so a lot of people say that they don't have time, and I hear myself say it all the time, but what's wrong with that statement?
What is wrong with that statement is we forget a reality. And the reality is there are 24 hours in a day. The reality is we have 24 hours, and it's not going to get more, and actually it's not going to get less.
Right.
The other reality we forget is there is no typical day. Think about it. You get up in the morning and there's fire to be put out here. There's the kids or there's school, there's something. So we need to understand a few realities. And the first one is 24 hours. The second one is there is no typical day. The third one is we can't do everything we want to do and others want us to do in available time. And all tasks are not equal. Some are longer, some are shorter, some are more important, so those are a few. There are more realities, but if we could get our head around this, then you'd be amazed how the great progress would make, because we can't solve a problem unless we identify it. And we keep blaming time. And where's the problem? Problem is me. I am not managing my priorities. I am not managing the things I need to do. I am not refusing to do things that I shouldn't be doing. And I'm spending too much time on rabbit holes on the internet.
Oh, yeah. Are we just too busy? I mean, we always hear people say, I'm too busy. I say it myself. So what does too busy mean? Because it sounds like we're too busy. We don't have enough to, we have too much to do in the 24 hours that we've been given.
I said to my students, if you're busy, you're not dead. So
okay, there's that.
We're always busy because we always take things on. We don't learn, no, not now, later. That's crucial to understand, because can you do this for me? Oh yeah, sure. And we don't stop and think, you know what? If I do this, I can't do that. If I do this, I am going to have to rush to do that. And the other thing is we refuse to accept that we cannot multitask. Multitasking, all the research has shown multitasking is wasteful. If you have 2 things, it means 50-50, 33-33-33. We need to be single tasking. But most of all, what I suggest our viewers do is analyze your time. Take a day, any day, because every day is going to be different. Take a weekday and list everything you do. Take a weekend day and list everything you do. And then in the next column, you said, okay, gee, am I really spending so much time here, there, and so on? And try to do a plan to reduce it. The other thing we should be doing? We should be spending time just to goof off.
Oh.
My time, your time. I call it me time. We say, you know what? I'm just going to go chill. I'm just going to relax. That's recharging.
Right? We all need that. Exactly. One suggestion there that you made was about multitasking. It sounds a little strange because we've always heard that it's an asset to be a good multitasker, but that's not always the case, is it?
The research, not my opinion, the research says that's bad because of the brain. If you think about it, if you're occupied with this and occupied with that, you can't give 100% here and there at the same time. So what the researchers are saying, no, you need to focus on one thing at a time. It can be in sequence. One of the tools that are helpful is what's called a Pomodoro clock, which is a very fancy way of saying whenever you're working, have a timer, and then try to not work for longer than 25, 30 minutes, and then take a break. So the Pomodoro clock, in fact, you could get an app which helps you to do it, which I used all the time. So if I'm preparing a lecture, I'm working, I put the Pomodoro clock after 30 minutes, it dings and it says, hey, take 5-minute break. And I look through the window, I go for a walk, I drink some water, I come back and I'm recharged. I'm energized. So it's counterintuitive. The more we take breaks, the more we can do, as opposed to not taking a break and just trying to do everything. It's actually counterintuitive, but it works. It absolutely works.
That's interesting. I like that. Now, Michael, in your book, you write about selective neglect. Selective neglect. So, can you maybe explain what that means?
Yes, selective neglect is probably the most important tool we can use. I believe every day we should prepare, prioritize, and prune. 3 Ps. We prepare, we prioritize, and prune. And in pruning, it means so I have A, B, C, D, E, F. And now I can't do A, B, C, D, F. So I now need to neglect one or two. And what selective neglect does, in advance, you identify what you're not going to do. And by the way, in the process of not doing something, you're disappointing somebody. So you want to know, what am I not going to do? Who am I going to disappoint? And you plan to do it, the disappointment. So I would say tomorrow, oh, absolutely. I have, say, a luncheon meeting on Friday. And when I look at my stuff tonight, I said, oh, I can't do it. So what I need to do tonight is to send a message or call the person and say, by the way, I can't do this. Can we reschedule? So I am consciously neglecting a task or a person, but I am being respectful and in advance trying to see how we can work this out.
Well, it takes a lot of pre-planning to be neglectful like that.
I came across this because I was in Montreal in my office and we had tickets to a Canucks and I think it was a Canadians game. My son likes the Canucks, I like Canadians. And I called home about 4 p.m. and I said to my wife, I can't take my son. And she says, oh, come on. What do you mean you can't take him? I said, well, I have this meeting. Anyway, she effectively said, he and his buddies are thinking about this. And that's when it dawned on me, I got to disappoint one person. So I went to the president and I said, you know what? I have to take my son tonight. I can't do this. Sorry, we'll have to do it another time. And then I realized, hey, I need to plan these neglects. If I arrange with my wife to have dinner, I'm going to neglect some other things. So with selective neglect, we constantly, so instead of having a to-do list, or in addition, we also have something what we are not going to do and how we're going to manage not doing it. It's crucial. It's absolutely crucial.
Wow. Michael, you also call quality time a myth. So what do you mean by that? Isn't it good to spend quality time with loved ones?
When my son was 18 and I was living in Japan, and he was in Canada going to university, he said, Dad, when we come for Christmas, I need to spend some time with you. Sure, that's why you come in. He said, no, but with you alone. Okay, so he comes and he says, you're not here for me. He's 18. I'm thinking, what? He said, you're not here for me. You set aside these quality time things, Oh, so we spend 5 minutes and or an hour and we do all these things. But that's like once a week or twice a week. He says, I need your time. And I'm thinking, oh, oh, oh. He says this quality time thing. And I sat back and I thought, he's right. I was deluding myself that I was spending quality time with my son, and that pleased me. And he said, no, I need more of you. And he was right. And my suggestion is what we need to do is to not talk about quality time, but talk about relationships and what people need. Quantity. It could be 5 minutes sometimes, it could be 5 hours sometimes, it could be 1 hour sometimes, but it's not this. But I think it's a guilt relieving thing, certainly for me, when I'd say, well, I spend 2 hours a week with my son. We sit down and we play board games and we fly kites. And he says, no, I can't even talk to you because I don't have your attention. So I think, which by the way, leads into my opinion, it's a myth to try to balance life and work. No, there are priorities. You don't balance them. There are more important things. Some things are more important than others. Some days, work is going to take the precedent. Some days, because you have an assignment or so, but most days it's going to be the family. So instead of seeking to balance, my suggestion is we seek to prioritize, because when we balance, it puts us on a guilt trip. Oh, I'm not balancing. No, but when we set clear priorities, for me, when I was in Alcan, every Thursday night, I'm taking my wife on a date. That's it. That's it. That's a priority. But occasionally, something comes up at work and I says, honey, can we postpone? And she says, fine, but not balancing. So that's my suggestion about balancing work and life. Focus on priorities. Focus on the 3 Ps. Here, prioritize, prune, selective neglect. What am I taking out?
Okay,
Crucial.
that's a good one. And in your book, you also say to be effective with your time. You say we must set goals. So we set these goals, but we typically don't purposely set aside time for the plan.
Yes, because you see, what we have a view in society that we should only budget money as opposed to budgeting time, which actually is more important. So when we set a goal, what's a goal? A goal is a destination, is where we want to go, but a goal is useless without a plan. And the plan represents the steps that we need to do to achieve the goal, which includes time required. But we don't do that. We don't do that. And I think it's important for us to look at a decision making process. When we're making a decision, we need to say, first of all, what's the consequences of doing this and not doing it? We don't do that. So we say, oh, somebody said, can we do this? Oh, yeah, right. But maybe we won't do it. Maybe we'll do it next week. Maybe we'll do it next year. In other words, we should look at the consequences and timing of these situations. So, yes, we have to work with goals, but without the plan, the goal is a suggestion.
Where does time typically get lost?
Okay, I strongly recommend that each person identify time drainers. Your time drainer is different from my time drainer. My time drainer actually is writing. I love to write. I'm writing a blog and I will spend forever researching the blog. So I will research. So that's a huge time drainer, which is why I need to use the pomegranate, the Pomodoro clock. I love
Yeah,
pomegranates.
I like
Anyway,
pomegranate too. So
yeah, Pomodoro, it's a Pomodoro clock. So each person, but typically what I see, it's our famous phones, the internet, which leads onto Facebook and Instagram. And in other words, it's the devices that we have drain time. Because what happens is we never set time. We need to prepare ourselves to work for task, a job, or work for time. So if I'm writing a blog, I'm working for tasks. I don't care about the time generally, most times. But if I want to publish it tomorrow, I set a time. So the time drainer my experience with students and research I've done, the main time drainer actually is quote unquote the internet, because there are rabbit holes we go on, whether it's
Oh,
TikTok,
yes.
this leads to that, etc. So my suggestion is never ever just go on the internet to search. Set a time.
You know, Michael, speaking of time, unfortunately, we are out of it right now, unfortunately, but you gave us some really great nuggets of information and advice there, and I think we should use some of it. We should also check out your book. So thanks so much for being with us today, Michael. Really appreciate having you on.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being here. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You as well. Michael Bell is the author of Managing God's Time. Well, now that the switch has been made from standard time to daylight saving time, how are you feeling? Some say the time change can have a negative impact on our bodies and our minds. Well, today's guest is going to share some expertise on the subject. So we're joined today by Professor Rob McDonald. He is a professor of psychology and neuroscience at the University of Lethbridge. Welcome. Good to have you with us today, Professor McDonald.
Well, thanks for having me.
Okay, so a lot of people like that extra hour of light so that we can go outside in the evenings, have those extra activities a little bit longer in the day, but apparently there are some negatives that come along with this, like sleeping issues and even mood changes.
So there's quite a few issues in that statement. So one of the issues is just the shifting. So what is the impact of the shifting? And there are short-term acute changes that happen. It's going to affect your mood. It's going to affect your sleep. But it also can have effects like increases in industrial accidents, car accidents, higher incidences of heart attacks and strokes and things like that. But these are very acute effects that happen within a week or two of when the shift happens.
Okay, that sounds pretty serious, getting away from just the sleeping issues and the mood changes. I would imagine the accidents and whatnot are caused because of the sleeping issues, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, they're related.
Yeah. So, I mean, are we talking about losing a day or two of sleep or having a bad day now and then? Or are we talking long-term depression, insomnia?
No, I would argue that these shifting effects are really acute. They're not going to last that long.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's good to know. I mean, can it like long-term, like depression and insomnia, that can't be brought about by anything like daylight saving?
Well, no. So the shifting is that issue. That's an acute thing, I believe. There is a significant long-term effects of this shifting back and forth from daylight savings to standard time. So it is not a good way of controlling people's social time in society.
Right. Can you tell us a bit about how our minds and our bodies work together? How much does this affect our circadian rhythm?
Yeah, so you have deep inside your brain a tiny little clock, and it's called the master clock. And it's connected directly to your eyes. And so when you wake up in the morning, you get that beautiful broad spectrum sunlight. It sets your clock for the day. And that little clock, it's only like 20,000 neurons in a brain of 86 billion neurons. So tiny, tiny little system. It has control over so many different things in both your brain and your body. And what it's doing is it's setting all of these different clocks. So for example, in your stomach, it's setting that clock every day. Different parts of your brain that do different things, it's setting those clocks as well.
That's so interesting. I mean, are these same things happening if you are, say, going to another part of the world where you're switching your clock, like you have to go to Europe? Is it the same type of effect on your body?
Yes, it's exactly the same thing. So that you're talking about jet lag. So, yeah, so let me just step back for a second. So the clock is trying to, basically it's like a conductor, and it's telling certain parts of the body to do certain things at certain times. So be very active. And then other times of day, it's bringing them down to very low levels. So it's like taking resources and allocating them when you need them. So when you need to eat, it's telling the stomach and the GI tract to be ready and have all of those mechanisms ready. And when you're sleeping and fasting, those systems go down. So it's this beautiful coordination of all of these biological functions. When you do things like shift work or you fly across to Europe, you are massively disrupting that system. And so when you fly to Europe, for example, it can take you up to a week or two before that clock gets set again. Shift work, which we study, is even worse. It is linked to cancer, Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, diabetes. It's crazy how bad that kind of lifestyle is on your brain and body.
It's just horrible. Like, are these negative effects of time change, are they less severe in the autumn because we gain an hour of sleep, or is it basically the same?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the one we just experienced is the worst one. And that just has to do with the vague, it's not because of the sleep gain or loss, really. It seems to be, it's just how sensitive that master clock is to phase advances, we call them, or delays.
Okay.
So phase advances like the one we just did are much more detrimental to the system. It takes it longer for it to get back to normal levels.
Okay. I mean, it's nice to have more light in the evening after work, especially in December and January when it gets
That's
dark
right.
so early. But so would it be a viable option to stay with daylight savings year round? Like, I mean, I personally would be all for this. I just don't like that 4-month change. Literally, we're changing it in November and again in March. We got just a 4-month difference there. Don't you think if we stayed the same on daylight instead of going back to standard time, it would everyone would just be, it would just normalize? That's how I see it.
So the reason they did this, the claim was it was for economic reasons, like having businesses in different regions more aligned. So, normal business hours, electricity savings, all of these things. Most of this turned out not to be true or necessary. So the real reason why it was done is not clear, but we do love those long summer nights where it stays light. The problem is the science is very, very clear, and most scientists in an area of science do not agree on things. And this is one thing I would say that most circadian scientists agree on. We should be on standard time all year long, because our social clock and our biological clock are more aligned. And we're currently in the bad part of this switch. This spring to autumn, this daylight savings is not good for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Despite what they say, I would like to see that sunset in the wintertime at 5:30 instead of 4:30.
Yeah, I know what you mean,
It's
for
just
sure.
nice to, get out. I mean, I did spend some time living near the equator at one point, and I found quite a bit difference because the days are actually more the same all year.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, like instead of going, like the sun goes down at 6 in the wintertime and it goes down at 7 in the summer. And so I really miss those Canadian summer nights.
It's just not good for your clock, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Our brains evolved, long before these crazy sort of artificial light and entertainment that we have now. Our system was just not designed for that. It was really designed to be set to the sun coming up in the morning and then going to bed when it actually gets dark out.
Okay, well, that would be 4 o'clock in the winter time.
Yeah, exactly. But at least it's signaling your brain. The problem with these late summer nights where it's light a lot is your brain is not getting that darkness signal. So it's thinking that you should be staying up. And so you're not eventually getting that melatonin signal to help you go to sleep.
That must be why I couldn't go to bed last night till 1 o'clock in the morning. And that would explain it. That would explain it.
Yes.
I feel like just avoiding the clock change and staying the same, whether it's one or the other, would probably be the best. I mean, what about the argument that some people say that, while there's a correlation, it doesn't necessarily mean there's a causation?
No, a lot of this work, I'm telling you, there is a lot of the correlation work. So that stuff about when the switch happens and there's more industrial accidents, it is a correlation. It's a weird one because it's the only thing that's changing. But there's lots of the work that I'm talking about in terms of using standard time consistently throughout the year and these effects of shift work and all of that. Lots of experimental work, so very clear causation.
So interesting. Are there some practical things people can do to lessen the negative effects of time change?
That's really interesting. Yeah, so one of the things that we've seen is that people who have very regimented lifestyles, they wake up at the same time every day, even on the weekends, they eat at the same time. That kind of regimentation seems to be very good for your clock. You tend to age better, etc. Lights, so artificial lights that you can buy, so you can get a very nice light signal in the morning if you're getting up very early. We believe things like diet and exercise are fundamental. So exercise like after this change can really help your clock set faster or protect you from some of those effects.
Okay, I like that. If we compare populations from the Northern Hemisphere with other areas of the world, like middle or southern zones, can we see differences in people's health with more or less daylight hours?
Yeah, I mean, some of the problem with that work is that the people up north are trying to mitigate those issues, and so they're doing things in their lifestyle with bright lights and things like that to try to mitigate those problems. But there clearly are effects of being up there, and we know that animals who have evolved in those northern ecological niches have adapted their circadian system in really interesting ways. So when there's a nice light dark cycle, they have a beautiful circadian rhythm, and then that system shuts down when it's all dark, always dark, or it's always light. But humans don't have that advantage, unfortunately. So there are definitely effects.
Yeah, it would be nice to hibernate all winter long, that's for sure. I would love that. Do we know if this negative effect of time change, if it impacts certain groups of people more than others? For example, males, females, older people versus younger?
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors. Age is one of them. So as we age, our clocks start to fall apart, and we think it's a very high correlation with dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So if that clock goes, males and females, there has not been a lot of work looking at females. It's a huge problem in science generally, but in our laboratory, we found very clear effects. So for example, females are protected from cognitive effects of circadian, like shift working. And the way we look at that data is that we think it's because they've evolved to have to deal with childbirth and having to care for children, newborns, when they don't have a circadian clock. So it takes months for their clocks to come online. And so women have evolved to, at least on a cognitive level, be able to mitigate those problems so that they can perform while the men are sleeping through all of this. So in terms of resilience too, there's clear differences. The people who end up in shift work, we believe, are a biased sample. They are people who are actually resilient to it. And so the effects are probably even worse. So people pull out because they just can't deal with it. And there's something called chronotype. So people have a chronotype, we call it. Circadian chronotypes. So they're late chronotypes, so they like to go to bed late and get up late. Early chronotypes are the opposite, and then people in the middle. And your chronotype affects how resilient you are to these things, and as well as this time change, as well as whether you're being exposed to daylight savings or not. So your chronotype can have a fundamental effect on all of these effects.
So what's the difference? If you have a late chronotype, are you more susceptible, or can you roll with the punches?
Yeah, so the late one is not so good. And, the late chronotype is, if you think of the way that people behave, often on their days off, they go to their natural chronotype. So they'll sleep in on the weekends if they're late. But now, when they go to work, so I'm a late chronotype, but I have to get up at 6:30 to take my children to school. And so I have something called social jet lag, which means when I really want, my body wants me to wake up, I have to wake up 2 or 3 hours earlier, and that is a huge social jet lag, and that is very bad for your brain and body as well.
Okay, that's so interesting. That would explain why some people are naturally night owls and
That's right.
others are naturally early birds.
That's right.
Okay, interesting. That's so interesting. So the early birds adapt better to the time change
Yeah.
than us late people.
That's right.
Definitely a night
And-
owl right here.
Yeah, and the late chronotypes struggle because they're struggling against social time, right? They're sort of off of the normal social systems that we work in and go to school in and all of those kinds of things.
Yeah. Okay, so you were saying out of the three choices of staying with the current switching of times or the day or the year-round rather daylight saving or the year-round standard time, you're saying the best would actually be the standard time.
That's right.
And because that was
Very clear.
That was the time that was based on the sun.
Yeah, that's the one where we're most closely aligned, our social clock and our biological clock. And
But wouldn't that I was going to say, wouldn't that mean that in the summertime the sun is coming up literally at 3 o'clock in the morning? I mean, 3:30.
it's just an hour difference. So you're waking up just, if we were on standard time, you'd be waking up when probably the sun is just about to come up. Whereas right now it's still, it's dawn, but it's not enough light to really set the clock. And then at the other end of the day, you have this problem of all this light going to your clock saying you should be up, when you should start being preparing for, getting ready to go to bed within a few hours.
It's really hard with little kids too, trying to get them to go to bed when the sun is still, and they're like, but it's still daytime. Yeah, I remember struggling with that as a kid as well. I still do. Looks like we're out of time here, speaking of time. So we thank you so much for being with us today. It's been a really enlightening conversation about daylight.
Well, thanks. I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much.
Professor McDonald is a professor of psychology and neuroscience at the University of Lethbridge. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.